I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, but Andrew Kuo does not take days off, not even when GameStop is trending. Welcome, Andrew Kuo.
Thanks, man. I'm rich. Are you rich? Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, my net worth quadrupled, but it was not because of this. I was just heavily invested in GameStop to begin with. It was not part of any scam. I just really believe in GameStop as a brand.
The fastest growing network on the streets. It's like, what'd you start from? Like, not much. I doubled it. Wow, 200%, huh?
No, I mean, as a GameStop day one, I have to say it's nice to see everyone jumping on the bandwagon. I think this company's headed for greatness, and I'm glad to see that people believe that physically buying copies of Echo the Dolphin,
Crash Bandicoot 5. Listen, man, I love gamers, certain gamers, and I love the whole video game scene. But GameStop it's really a surprise story this week.
Do you love gamers?
I do. I mean,
I say this with no judgment. I just didn't know this side of you, but I am recalling that you did mention at one point that you liked watching people game.
I've always stuck to I'm a gamer fan day one. I watched for a while when they were trying to make these things big. Like Rick Fox has his own gaming team. They were, playing in Barclays. I tried to go. I couldn't make it, so I just watched it on TV. I like that whole scene, man.
Yeah, you were pushing esports for a second there.
Yeah, I was. It kind of died down, kind of like soccer died down. Remember, like every year, soccer is supposed to be the next big
Every
American
4
sport.
years, we keep hearing about soccer.
Yeah, it's going to take over North America for sure.
And it has these bursts of popularity, I don't know, once every 4.5 years, where people go out in the summer and they watch games and bars at 8 a.m, and then it just disappears. People forget about soccer. Well, I don't know why that happens.
It's crazy how things always cycle through. I can't wait for 3 years from now. VR is going to be the next thing. It's like, yo, listen, it's going to be a totally immersive experience. I'm like, yeah, sure.
I mean, it's crazy. We just got done with a presidential election, and I bet you in like 2.5, 3 years, we'll start talking about like presidents are back again.
Oh, dirtbag politicians are back.
Oh, draining the swamp all over again, and then we're gonna have to hear about Iowa.
I mean, I'm the GameStop story is interesting, right? I'm a tourist kind of here, but I have been trying to get into the way all this stuff works for a few years. It's beyond my pay grade, and my pay grade is fucking low.
Your pay grade is incredible.
Oh, I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, it's more than what I should get paid, but it's not.
So, a quick description of GameStop and why it's on everyone's lips as this up-and-coming new company that sells copies of Metroid.
That's been around forever. But it has, to give GameStop credit, it was a stock that people had invested in recently, even the Chewy guy, for example, because they were about to adapt in a drastic way that was extremely promising, sort of like when Netflix went from DVDs to streaming.
There may be some underlying factors here, but what's caused this national story about GameStop stock
Global,
is that a large hedge funds, specifically one I think it was called Melvin something or other, they were basically selling short on GameStop with the anticipation that it would lose value and crumble. And it was something like 136% of it was, I guess, leveraged in this way. Do not ask me how that could occur. I don't understand the ramifications of more than 100%, how that would happen. But that was the case. So it was also a way to make money and punish hedge funders for, I guess, rooting against GameSpot.
Well, kind of. Shorting is a
Sort of?
just to clarify, shorting is an action where they're not bottoming the stock out to let go of it. They're bottoming it out to buy it back. So they're trying to create value within the stock itself. So you undersell it. You let it go, and in theory, the stock plummets, and then you buy it back, and then it goes back up, and you have made millions and maybe even billions of dollars off of that one action that you influenced.
I see what you're saying. Right. But ultimately, I guess for the purposes of this conversation, the hedge funders needed to buy the stock at increasingly high prices in order to satisfy the requirements of shorting the stock, correct?
Yes, because they released the stock and bottomed it out, and these Redditor nerds, it's a whole like Robin Hood kind of squad, like got woke to it and was like, we have to do something. This is too obvious, too hilarious. Let's buy up the stock before they can. So essentially, them losing the entire profit margin and the money they paid for it. So if they're going to do this in plain daylight, the Redditor nerds were like, we see you, and instead of waiting for you to capitalize on this, we are going to capitalize on this. And they cut off the process, basically.
And they executed what is called a squeeze. And I cannot explain it that well. You did a better job than I. But this is a known tactic.
It's been going on for a long time.
Right. So in general, there's a lot of hand-wringing about this group on Reddit, and like the public orchestrated this. But this is not an uncommon move in Wall Street overall, correct?
Oh man, no, not at all. A lot of it leads to calamity, sometimes crashes, but this is a behavior that is well known out in the open that people do all the time.
So the hedge funders exposed their hand, and people realized a way to turn it against them.
When you have that much equity, you can influence the price. Like me and you can't do that, obviously. Me and you can't do that. But someone who with a lot of money in the stock market can't do that. It has to be a substantial holder of that stock.
Right. And I mean, I just feel like we're trying to explain parts of this that, at least personally, I can only vaguely, elaborate on. But the idea is that there's unlimited losses if you are selling short. So the hedge funders who were selling short on this stock, people can buy it back from them at like whatever they want. So as it rises higher and higher, they stand to lose just incredible, vast amounts of money.
Yeah, it's insane. It's on paper, it's a really simple idea, right? Like I think if you go back to caveman days where we were using clamshells as money, like it's like, well, shorting the value of a clamshell is something that I think someone had figured out maybe on day two. Not the day ones,
like
the day twos.
Right, not clamshell day ones.
No, never. But clamshell day twos for sure had figured out shorting. And this happens in basketball. This happens when you're just like, I don't know, betting on anything in a bar or something. Like this behavior is deeply human. But I think like the funny thing about this story to me is how there's an uproar about it, and it's layered, right? Because the uproar at first is just like it's a pearl clutching by the Wall Street set, being like, this is unethical behavior by these nerds, and we cannot have them disrupt our community like this. And then I quickly go to like, oh, nerds are not all good Robin Hood kind of people, right? Nerds, just because they watch V for Vendetta or like
I feel like that idea has been demolished over the last decade. The idea that nerds are virtuous.
But then it's not that we're saying they're virtuous or not virtuous. I think the discussion is like, whoa, this GameStop thing is so interesting and everyone's talking about it. I'm like, oh, the elements are there, right? Reddit, anonymous Reddit nerds with weird profile names. GameStop is the one. AMC also got shorted, but it's not as tasty as GameStop because we opened with like, are we talking about like Duke Nukem 5? So it opens up like kind of a cultural entryway to what's happening. And in my opinion, Wall Street does not want any of that smoke. Like, we don't want people to have any interest in this at all.
Oh, of course. Because for all of the hand-wringing about market manipulation, that's what Wall Street does. That's what hedge funds do. That's what investment banks do, etc. Yeah. So for an anonymous group, and they're not anonymous, which is funny.
No, we know who they are, yeah.
And there are also people who own stock. I mean, it's not... This idea that the internet is different from reality falls apart on this. These are people who are spending actual money and making actual money.
They're rich. They've been buying up this stuff with capital that blows my mind.
Yeah, one of the ringleaders of this made something like, what, $20 million over the
Allegedly, yeah. And
I mean,
the Chewy guy also hit it big. I love Chewy as a company. I use it all the time, but he's not just, right, to your point, he's not just somebody who makes pet owners get stuff they want. He's like a shark on the stock market.
I don't know who is the good guy or bad guy in this. Like, they could all sort of be self-interested, malevolent actors in some way. But I will say that the hedge fund billionaires losing their shirts, or taking a bath, as they would say in the terminology of the stock market, is a little delicious. The fact that it ties into the Mets is quite funny. And in general, guys who are really rich losing money and a larger group of people getting some of it, you know, the Robin Hood theory.
Yeah.
Like, I am with Reddit on this. But overall, it's not as easy as good and bad guys. To me, it's mostly, it just exposes kind of the fraudulence of the stock market when all of a sudden, you know, the powers that be jump in and are saying, wait, we can't do this. No, that's wrong. We've got to make changes so that this can't happen.
I mean, I think it's really important for companies, if you can, let's consider the stock market a company and the NBA. It's important for them to think like, for them to prove to us that it's fair, right? Whatever fair is. Like, the NBA is not stacked. You know, an adult seltzer should cost $15. You know, and they don't want us to think about it. It'd be like, well, it's, you know, price of the cost of the cost of the ticket. And I think with the stock market, it's interesting, especially after 2008. Of course, I was into this because I love delicious food from Chinatown. But the Abacus Bank story always pops up to me, and how there were so many bad actors in 2008 that not only shorted stock, but it was like about fraudulent loans and a lot of junky kind of concepts that snowballed into a big crash that affected everybody. And then they went after a small bank in Chinatown because they were maybe giving out loans to like restaurants fraudulently. And there was a documentary about it that was pretty well known. But to have that be the only bank that got scrutiny was kind of like a reveal of how this process works.
Speaking of processes and, you know, the way that Sixers fans, such as myself, would view this, you even see that with the way that Adam Silver and the NBA's involvement with the Philadelphia organization
for sure
took place, where people say, wait a minute, all these teams are tanking, all these teams are manipulating the game, in ways that are, you know,
the lottery is a manipulation.
Exactly, that flout, you know, competitiveness and this so-called spirit of the sport. But how come Philly was the only team that had, you know, their GM rousted and, you know, and other actors inserted into the organization? So, I mean, the Sixers are the Abacus Bank, is what you're saying.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and then there's, I guess Mark Cuban would be the Chase Bank, who was like, we're going to tank for this one player, and we're going to get this one player by losing. And he did it. And everyone's like, Luka's MVP. I'm like, right. And they don't criticize, well, some people, we forget what Mark Cuban has done out in the open because our imaginations are with the unethical practices in Philly, you know.
What is interesting about Wall Street bets and this just larger population, whether it's in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, a million, who can say how many people are on this? It does threaten the stock market with these kind of transactions all the time, though, right?
For sure.
Like,
yeah.
if you just say, all right, us 2 million, if we find out that this is this one company has a AMC or Bed Bath and Beyond, these companies, legacy brands that are struggling, that people have bet against, we can execute this whenever we want. We just have to funnel a bunch of funds into it, and it'll go up for 2 days, and we can all sit here and make triple our money and then bounce.
I mean, this happens in the art market all the time, and it's so hard to regulate it because there is really nothing happening illegal. The demand for a painting goes up and down, and if you create a demand that's feverish and you bank on that and then let it go, like, there's nothing illegal with that, but there's something wrong, and we all sense it. There's something rotten about it. And you're right, with this action in the stock market, it's hard to pinpoint where the illegality is, but something could go very wrong very quickly if we don't fix it. And I'm all for making things better all the time. It's not like we can't fix this thing, but to take the opportunity away from these hilarious Redditors feels like a backward solution.
I mean, just glancing at my phone right now, GameStop is at $341.
Jesus. Yeah. Yeah.
It's gone up $193 today alone.
Insane. I have a couple friends who texted me when this was going down, being like, I'm going to put $200 into it because this is fun and I believe in it. I'm like, do it, man. This is what the stock market is, and they probably have doubled or tripled their money.
I mean, I certainly regret reading an article about this at 8 a.m. yesterday.
I mean...
And not doing anything about it. But, again, this is how all these things are.
Yeah. Do you have the mental dexterity to sell off at the right time? You'd be like,
tough.
holding
It's
on
tough.
to it. Yeah.
And if you're not accustomed to that, it's a harrowing ride. It starts dipping. You're like, wait, I know this is a fraud.
Yeah.
I know that if the plug gets pulled, this is going back down to $4 to $15, whatever, and you're going to lose a shit ton. I mean, but that's why having maybe hundreds of thousands of people and Elon Musk tweeting about game stonks, like it's quite hilarious to have a company that's basically worthless have a stock that's, monumental at this exact moment, because it will collapse.
It will, and I don't have the cojones for this kind of poker. Like, I hold constantly. I'm terrible at poker, but I'm a holder. So, like, this kind of stuff boggles my mind because you have to be kind of a Michael Jordan sociopath living in the moment kind of person, being like, that GameStop story was amazing 5 days ago. Incredible. I sold it all off. And I'm like, but it was so fun. Like, don't you want to go for the ride? And it's like, no, it's time to go on it. And I don't have that mental part of me. And sometimes I view people who do have that as like suits and bad people who don't aren't loyal. And I fall into the trappings of like, how dare James Harden, steer his own career path,
I mean, this specific stock is quite interesting because if you were paying attention to what they were doing, you could have said, this is just going to keep going up as long as people pump money in. Like, they're breaking the system with this.
It might not go down. Tesla had a kind of an odd year where a lot of experts thought it was kind of operating under this same premise. Like, it was being gassed by a vibe. It turns out that vibe, sort of like Bitcoin, is as real as what you think is real, if that makes sense.
Yeah, not to trigger you by bringing up billionaires who you love and defend. I didn't really get how your boy Elon Musk gained so much wealth to become the world's richest man.
Yeah,
Because did they sell a bunch of cars? No, right? Like, he didn't build tunnels under Miami.
No, he didn't do anything specifically, but I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at Tesla because I think what they want to do moving forward there was a delay on it. He came out and he was like, there's a problem with the idea of energy, and energy is the whole premise of which we operate in politics, in the world, and your happiness. We can talk about an electric powered car, but what we're really talking about is global warming and war in the Middle East. And he, immediately was talking about this. So I kind of love the way he thinks, whatever. I know people don't like him, but he definitely listens to Slipknot for sure. But I
just find him like
aesthetically, whatever. He's not my friend.
A deeply distasteful individual.
Sure, because now he's rich, and that doesn't help any brand. But like,
I think he'd be really lame if he was broke.
Well,
like his wealth is the only thing that kind of makes him interesting. The rest of it is just
disagree.
Like phenomenally drab.
He was the first person who successfully kind of started the ball rolling on the idea that the next 10 years are going to be shaped, or the rest of our lives are going to be shaped differently, not only because of politics and the wealth gap, but it's all fueled by the idea of energy. And
we've been talking about the electric car for decades.
But who did it? He did, right? And like, there's NIO in China, there's Li in China who are trying to manufacture these objects, these batteries, these cars. But he had a huge head start, and that's no secret. He had maybe almost a decade head start on these companies. And I think when people started realizing, sort of like Bitcoin, like, oh, this is no longer a joke. We're staring this future now, at this future now.
How many Teslas actually get sold?
That doesn't matter, right? Like, so I don't think that's a good question.
But this is kind of what we're getting into in the whole conversation about value. Mm-hmm. Like, what is perception? What is reality? If
I would not trade RJ Barrett for sure, but how many
Teslas
good
work,
games has he had? Right.
If Teslas work, then that's an idea that bolsters value. If people aren't particularly buying them, it may not matter because we're talking about a concept. At the same time, ultimately, if we're talking about a business and with technology that other companies are going to roll out and have been rolling out, your market share within that would matter too. So I don't know. I was just mostly curious about why he had this spike.
Yeah,
during quarantine, during a pandemic, without there necessarily being a reason for it. But he's also could just be human GameStop in the flesh.
No, I think there is a reason for it specifically. It's sort of like how everyone's freaking out about Cade Cunningham. Like, what has he done? Nothing. So a boomer would say, like, but he hasn't played a single game. What's the big deal? Why are you losing games for this hypothetical thing? It's like, oh, Cade is going to happen barring an injury. Like, he's going to be real sooner than you think. And that's why I think a lot of teams are readjusting their plans, maybe even for 2 years for this kid. And that's how the stock market works, right? It's speculation. So it is kind of the tanking thing. But the value of a draft pick is literal money. And
that's kind of what's really exciting. I mean, it's not something I'm mega into, but exciting about the GameStop is that they've dispensed with the idea and the pretense that it's speculative.
Yeah, that's
real.
real.
No. This is just, are we willing to keep funneling money into this until we aren't?
Right.
There's no underlying financial stability or, no one thinks that GameStop is worth anything close to what it's being sold at because they've gotten rid of this speculation. The quote value has just been absolutely exorcised from this equation entirely.
And that's sort of the beginning of what you said is sort of why I defend an idea like what happened to Tesla this year, because that was real. So some of the same experts who said it was overvalued are now saying it might be undervalued, and the brackets keep on changing on it, sort of like a prospect in the NBA. But what Tesla's doing is finally real, and the whole I tried to think I tried to figure out if I thought the stock market was a natural thing or an unnatural thing. And going back to clamshells day ones again, like, would the stock market exist without the infrastructure of our modern society? And I always come back to definitely, right? If someone's like, yo, nope, on the low, I've invented this thing, instead of carrying a bunch of stuff, it's round and you can put something on top of it and roll it, and it's much easier. Don't tell anybody. I'm like, this is amazing. He's like, I can't get enough 4 of these made unless you help me. But if you help me, I will give you 1 of these. And I'm like, oh, totally, I'll help you. And if I get one, done. And then I'm selling like the grapefruits I can haul back, or apples, whatever, pomegranates. And that is kind of like at its basis a way to think about the stock market for myself.
To me, whether it's Elon Musk's value or this GameStop chicanery, it exposes that the stock market is, very much divorced from reality. That doesn't mean that companies who are successful and then go public are not rewarded for their success by, earnings and more investors and gathering value via the stock market. Sure. But overall, it's a casino, and it's divorced from reality, and it's based on perception. So,
Wait, can I ask you a stony question? And
yes.
why isn't it reality?
Well, what I mean is, if a company is not public, then they're just operating regularly in real time, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, what's the difference? Like, going public is an infusion of cash. It can
Sometimes.
Well, an IPO, ideally, it just lends itself to billions of dollars flowing in.
You make the world know that you have invented a wheel, and if you would like a wheel, they don't have enough money to produce it for everybody. But if you invest, they will have enough money, and you will get a little piece of that for helping them, and maybe get a wheel yourself. But I love this idea of Bitcoin. I love this idea of the Redditors kind of talk about. They have a fluidity of like reality and like virtual stuff, right? Like they can talk about Bitcoin in ways that I think like the people I know and myself are like, come again? And it's this language and ability to operate in that world that I think makes me think that it is as real as any thought is. Like, is a win or a loss real? It depends on what you think in the moment.
We all understand how credit works, and we understand that when you travel, the dollars change. And
but
that's
this
all
is different
real.
than credit, right? Because you're not paying it back; you're paying it forward.
Well, I'm talking about like Bitcoin example. Like I don't think these are hard to associate with reality because they have value. It's like this hunk of gold is worth something. This diamond is worth something.
This
Bitcoin.
idea is worth. There's no gold to hold, right?
Like I don't think those are difficult to comprehend. I'm just saying with the stock market, I think when I say it's not reality, I'm saying that they are separate. That it is based on a lot of times perception and ideas and a vibe, and that's why. I mean, there's no way you can say. I don't mean you specifically that the surge in GameStop is based on reality. It's based on like a plan, and it's based on a way to make money and to punish other actors in this ecosystem. That's the reality of this absolute spike.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, not to get too.
It's not based on video games, other than people liking video games who are involved in this.
I mean, that's the question of like, how is Tesla doing so well if I don't see that many Teslas on the street? Like, there's a disconnect between those two ideas, but I do think the idea of GameStop is very real, and this thing is very real. Because if it's not real, then it wouldn't have real life implications.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just dancing in circles about the word real. I mostly just mean that they're separated by the idea that no one thinks that GameStop is going to become a powerful industry player at this point, where the company will be worth $340 a share.
I mean, it's definitely there's a trolling aspect to this where it's kind of the value in it is revealing the wrinkles and the mistakes in a flawed system that is hard to describe. And I even have trouble describing what a short really is, and I think an expert can swoop in and be like, "You're kind of wrong, but you're kind of right."
I definitely did a really bad job. So yours was better than mine, the idea that there's an expert out there who could top yours, I
Right.
I do not accept.
Right, right. I mean, not to get into the obvious comparison, but this is what advanced analytics was 10 years ago, right? It's just like there are ways to look at it that are really simple for the people who have invested time into it, and it's just it doesn't seem real to someone else. And slowly it's becoming real to them.
I think you could also say, if we're going to use this advanced analytics comparison, that it's just different ways of looking at the same numbers,
Yeah, for sure.
right? Because people have done these sort of stock squeezes in the past years ago. People understand field goal percentage, but true shooting percentage is viewed as advanced just because we're adding numbers up a different way.
And then what is effective field goal percentage? And these are concepts me and you love and understand because
Like the same shit is
live in
happening
them.
on the court, whether
Yes,
the game
yeah.
was being played 50 years ago by milkmen and dog catchers or by Allen Iverson, the first player in the NBA.
And that's where the funny thing is, right? Because I agree with you. It's just a game, but it's totally different. The way, I mean, we'll get into this later, the way players are behaving now is a result of analytics. And you're getting a bunch of different kinds of players now than you were 10 years ago because of these things. So the thing on the court is probably different.
There was an idea you just had mentioned about like memes and about how I don't know, these ideas can become real. And this is different from our conversation about, stock market divorce from reality. Because when you look at the assault, the siege on the nation's capital, it was the culmination of a lot of this. Internet ideas, memes, things getting passed around. And I think there's a comparison here, right? Where like it's the internet's ability to now impact IRL in different ways than we're accustomed to. It's like the flash mob was viewed as this modern phenomenon. So you're saying you met on the internet and then you showed up at the same place all with an umbrella. Holy shit, the internet is wild. And now it's like, so you guys all showed up at the Capitol and busted in and tried to hang Mike Pence, huh? Like, how'd that start? And you're like, well, it goes back to conspiracy theories and Prison Planet and, InfoWars and Sandy Hook. And you're like, oh, right. There's a lot of steps to this equation that gets you from sitting in your house to smashing in a window and trying to chase down Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, I definitely feel like some walls have been tumbled or cracked, where the powers that be don't feel that far away anymore. And that definitely has to do with technology and for sure the internet. And I try personally my hardest to like desensationalize a lot of this stuff because a lot of it just seems to me like gossip that gets a life, sort of like a meme, like you started this conversation with. A meme is a thing that lives and dies, and you have to feed it, you have to water it like a plant, you have to take care of it, and if you don't, it just goes away. And in order to fuel it, it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't behave differently than like a normal political campaign. How we read about like the Kennedys and how they got all this steam really quickly, some of them, and how it went out sometimes in tragically or in quick ways, and how Reaganism started. Like all this stuff is kind of very human, and we always say this on this pod, but technology accelerates everything, and COVID accelerates everything too. And what we saw this year was an acceleration. And then when I say desensationalize something, I still stand by like what happened in the Capitol was like a really, really odd thing because it wasn't the result of this movement. It wasn't, but it was a result of a poor performance, if you want to call it that, from things that optically showed us things that were surreal.
And that's not to mention how incredibly online some of these like Republican members of government are. Not to mention their supporters and the people who actually showed up to elbow their way in through the doors. I mean, the sharing of memes about Pizzagate and Hillary Clinton, peeling off children's faces and wearing them.
Where's the blood?
Wild stuff, man.
Yeah.
And they didn't even find the tunnels. Didn't even get to the tunnels.
Well,
all that work. You didn't even find the tunnels that lead to Comet Pizza.
No sin bin. When the Antonio Brown thing was funny before it was unfunny, I remember there was a moment where they said he hired an internet expert to create this campaign to change the narrative of what he's going through, and Dan Le Batard found that internet expert, and it was some 23-year-old kid being like, I don't know, I got hired, I didn't sleep that night, I was just trying to get a bunch of flame emojis, I don't know what happened. He's like, you're the expert? And he was like, I'm the expert, and that was the joke. But in my mind, I was
plot like, to Emily and Perry.
Yeah, in my mind I was like, oh, he's actually an expert. And I thought about that when we saw the footage of that Bell and Sebastian QAnon person ushering people in and maybe stealing Pelosi's laptop, and we have footage of her guiding people to. She was a leader inside the insurrection, and I looked at the footage, and people were just walking, and she was just pushing them on the shoulder, and I'm like, maybe is this someone just trying to get their own flame emojis?
It's so hard to tell with a lot of people in these groups that we saw because, we've talked about this for a couple weeks, but you had the kind of edgelords, the QAnon guys with Viking hats and furs.
Thank goodness for the Viking.
They were just comedy. Then you had, as you said, these actors who it's kind of hard to tell where they fall.
Mm-hmm.
Were they in there to try to murder members of our government?
Or were they having a rave? Yeah.
Or were they raving? Were they showing up to watch, stare at Randall's in a dirty ass yellow walled room of the Capitol?
Yeah. Is that footage of Knicks fans dancing under an overpass an insurrection or a rave? No, but
oh, sorry. I was going to ask you a question. Where do you fall on trying to drub the people out of government who encourage this? For example, your girl from, where's she from again? Virginia?
Georgia?
Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, who on her Facebook advocated for, I think, at least liked, maybe said it, I don't want to misquote it, but things that advocated violence against, say, Nancy Pelosi.
I think that this whole thing is a living organism that has to be taken care of, the government, and I am for kind of holding people accountable. And if she said these things and has a point of view that seems radical in this thing, we should not accept it as the guise of freedom of speech. If your plant has bugs, try to get rid of it unless it's bugs you like, right? So I am for accountability. If that accountability finds out that she's allowed to say these things, then maybe the overwhelming opposition to her will diminish her power.
I mean, at the same time, I feel like, when Trump was in office and at his worst, people would say stuff along those lines about what needs to happen to him. And so I'd sort of be there and I'd be like, please do not text me this shit. I know you're just speaking out of anger and frustration. Don't put that on my phone.
Right.
I don't need that.
Right.
And the amount of statements that people made about Donald Trump or probably Mitch McConnell in frustration on Facebook or on social media, if you tracked those people down and said, so what exactly did you mean by that? I don't know that it'd be that different from your girl, Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she's also in office. So at the same time, it's different from, some guy from the bar being like, you know what should happen? You're like, relax, dude. I mean, come on, man.
I mean, I don't enjoy those people either, man. It's lock her up. I'm like, that's gross. And it's just well, we should lock him up. I'm like, kind of gross too.
Well. Let's not say anything we can't take back about the value of locking up Hillary Clinton.
Right.
There's still time. There's still time.
Where are the servers? It's it's this kind of little box It's like, this looks like something I have. It's like, well, it is kind of something you have. It's like, but where are the servers?
Oh, Trump's going through all of his last-minute pardons. Any last-minute arrests, perhaps? Like getting down to the wire here.
Yeah. I'm disappointed at the Schadenfreude I thought I would have. I thought I was going to be a king. I thought I was going to gloat my way through 2021 being like, that's right. I won. I don't feel like I won anything. Except the richness I got from GameStop.
You don't consider yourself a Schadenfreude king?
I am not a Schadenfreude king. I am not a Schadenfreude day one either. So maybe I don't deserve it. But
I'm not a big Schadenfreude king either. You know, when you watch a video of someone acting like a fool in a restaurant or something, and then someone punches them,
yeah.
I understand the appeal, but it's not necessarily my bag.
It is not my bag, and sometimes I think I put too much hyperbole into my own life and being like, I wasn't there. That's not quite hyperbole, but like, I wasn't there. I don't know what this is about. I'm not even sure I hate the person who got knocked out. They were surely acting a fool in this edit, but I don't know these people. So I wish I had more Schadenfreude, but I disappoint myself.
If it's some really brazen racism, I feel like
Spencer getting sucker punched, I'm like,
so that to me, that's different.
I know, but then I found myself being like, well, I just hate that haircut. It's a stupid haircut.
So as a Schadenfreude king, you should be happy to see him get his block knocked off.
And yet, I root for Kristaps Porzingis, who has the same haircut.
Yeah, like neo-Nazis getting punched, yes, I'm on board. But just someone being mouthy in like a McDonald's, getting roughed up, they could have had a different outcome, man. just let everyone get their apple pies and be done with it.
Yeah, I can't even say that I don't enjoy part of it, and I don't, in my mind, initially wish the worst for some people that I think I don't like Suits or whatever. But that's what getting older is, right? Like, you go through a bit of stuff yourself, and then you're just like, this is complicated.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we also haven't seen your boy Trump since he was ejected from Twitter and Facebook and other, the Cookie Store, Cookie's Patreon page. Like, there's so many places that he can't function anymore. So he's been muzzled in a way that we can only assume he's pissy, that he's annoyed somewhere down in Florida, watching Fox, grousing and yelling. But they put the clamps on him. Mm-hmm. So we can't really revel in his impotent twittering and his rage. I'm sure we'd be annoyed by it, and we'd be hoping that they would make him shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
So we can't really have it both ways here.
Yeah, it's so hard. I always think, like, when people personify things that aren't people, and like, cancer sucks. Shout out to Karis LeVert. That was a relief. Crazy story. But, when people are like, fuck cancer, like, cancer's the enemy. And I'm like, oh, right. But it's like, or like COVID, right? Like, it helps to personify this thing in order to organize thoughts around it. And I do it all the time. It's like, fuck the Knicks. Like, he's a dick, like all this stuff. But the way we do that is, I think, helpful. And when Donald Trump isn't around, it's like a Batman without a Joker, right? And the whole joke with that comic book is like, who's bad, who's good, and can they exist without each other?
Yeah, it's kind of like Kevin Durant without Kyrie, a Batman. I'm saying Kevin Durant without Steph, like a Batman without a Robin.
It's true. And then you're just an Alfred, like Jason Tatum.
The other piece of news, it's still connected to the sort of onlineness of everything, which is just the world we live in, Andrew.
I'm with it.
Is the Proud Boys leader, Enrique Tarrio.
Wait, can you clear this up for me quickly?
Yes.
Is Gavin not the leader anymore?
I feel like he stepped down, but is clearly still a leader. Mm-hmm. This guy, Enrique Tarrio, I think he's
nice.
more of a street guy. Gavin, I think, just hides out.
Yeah, it
This
helps,
guy's more involved in running around and causing mischief.
and it
But
helps that
Gavin's-
he's not white, right?
I would guess that's probably a huge part of it. Gavin, I don't know if he's actually pretended to detach himself or has. I don't know the technicalities, but I don't think he's like in the mix to the extent that sort of these bruisers are. But yeah, it's so wild. They were like meeting at Barcade.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's where they were hanging out at Barcade, I think.
Wow, those
Williamsburg.
dirty hipsters.
Playing Frogger, thinking about Gamergate. If
Hey,
only they had stocks, that would have appealed to their interests.
Gavin McInnes maybe invented hipsters, right? Do's and don'ts, man. Crazy influential idea. But
Yeah.
do you think Gavin meant for this all to happen?
I mean, there's a long conversation about like hipster irony and racism to be had. And I felt like at first I didn't think it was serious.
I did not either.
I was like, this is a joke. No one would say these kind of racist things unless they're just trying to be edgy and to get a response. And then it morphed into
Oh my God.
a right-wing
Which is kind
street
of
army. It just fucking surreal.
Which is kind of your point with like what becomes an idea and funny, and then what actually manifests itself. And
What
I-
gathers moss?
I say Gavin with his first name because he was around. He hung out with us, the whole scene, and he was always kind of a contrarian, kind of iconoclast, right? And when the scene kind of shifted and got younger and we all kind of aged out, you kind of grasp for other things to, stick, kind of express yourself.
Well, for one, he was ousted from Vice, so he didn't have anything to do.
Right.
He tried to start, what's it called, Street Boners, I think.
Oh,
which was
oh my!
kind of
I totally forgot.
just
With Eccles,
another
right?
version of Do's and Don'ts, which was really his creation and his voice.
Yep. With a comedian, right?
I forget who was involved,
Derek
but
Eccles, maybe. Fuck.
yeah, he was bought out from Vice, like well before any of the Proud Boy stuff, and I don't think he had much going on. I don't know if those endeavors succeeded. I think he tried to start a marketing company too, around that same time, and it almost felt like, to your point, he was looking around for something else to sort of latch onto to be the figurehead of, and end up being like a quasi neo-Nazi, pro-fascist street army.
Which became that, right? And there is like a lineage. You can figure it out kind of like with some hardcore music and some subcultures like metal, like there is a line to that which sometimes you choose to cut off, or sometimes you just find yourself there. And a part of it, like 3% of me is like, oh, he found himself in a room he didn't expect to be in.
I mean, considering his voice was that
Not good.
edgelord racist voice that in some ways, almost brought down Vice.
Yep.
It may have given them some sort of hipster cred early on, but I mean, they had to get him out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, he was this toxic. What was that? 15 years ago?
I know.
It was a long time ago that he left Vice, and Vice gets dragged into this sometimes because of him being one of the founders. But I mean, that was a long time ago. He was not relevant in any way when he left the organization, or left the company. But
And I say that because if you read the tenets of the Proud Boys, it seems like performance art. Some of their rules when they were first started are just ridiculous, and it almost feels like comedy. And I'm not putting a weird light on it. I think it's manifested itself into something truly that I do not enjoy or agree with. But at first I was like, this can't be real, right? He's just like mocking other political movements.
this is how the Ku Klux Klan got started, though, right?
I mean,
It
people,
was
right? It's like,
costumes and pageantry and this, comedy.
but
sort
that
of
was
mythology of dragons. It was all wizards. It was intentionally steeped in cartoonishness.
until it
which
gets
also-
co-opted, right?
Yeah, and
It's
same
like Pepe
thing.
the Frog, right? That was a cartoon with no.
I mean, all these things we're talking about so far
Yeah.
for the first hour of the pod are related in that way. Like,
Yeah.
you can't tell what part of this is a joke. Ha ha ha! Look at GameStop. the guy made $20 million.
Insane.
$20 million. Like, they might crash a hedge fund. Like, good riddance, but ha ha ha. That's real shit.
Yeah. It feels glitchy. All this stuff feels glitchy. It
does.
You know, like memes feel glitchy too, where, you know, I do think about Pepe a bit because even the creator Pepe was like, what the hell? This is still going on.
I just like thinking about you at home.
Thinking about
staring
Pepe.
off into space, thinking Pepe.
I do, man. I do. Well, like the idea of, especially with the Jordan meme, right? Like, I feel like part of it is,
Pepe, are you under the same moon?
well, part of Jordan's motivation for doing The Last Dance was like to rewrite his legacy, and I'm sure a lot of that was like that damn meme, man. And I only say that because he always mentions it.
Oh, of course. Okay, now I'm going to stare at the laptop and I'm going to make a funny face. What? Oh, will that replace the crying Jordan?
Oh, Kobe Bryant's like memorial. I'm going to mention the meme.
That's when I took it personal.
Right.
Can we meme that?
Do we meme that? But I'm pro meme, but in general. But yeah, I do think about Pepe the Frog. What a weird thing. Oh, it's a frog, man. So now people like, if you see a frog emoji, it's like, that's not a good thing. I'm like, it's just a frog.
No, every time I see the frog, I look at it a little sideways. I'm like, is it just a frog? Is a frog a frog?
It's not a frog in it. What is the frog reality?
Is that a toad or is that a Nazi?
Don't lick the yellow frog.
That's the new pill.
Yeah.
So a little basketball talk. We're solid 51 minutes in to the
Nice.
world's most influential
Wow,
basketball
time flies,
podcast.
right.
We got a big game. The toast of the Eastern Conference against the toast of the Western Conference. Sixers versus Lakers tonight. That's a fun one. By the time you hear this, it might be over. So I don't know. Are you previewing it? Anyway, it's a good game. I'm ready to watch it.
Yeah, man. Time is a flat circle.
Yeah, like what do I say? I'm excited for this, and then you listen to this in 2 days and say, yeah. Good for you, dick.
Thanks for the news, jerk.
Well, I mean, one conversation that people are having here is, talking about early front runners for the MVP. Got Embiid, and LeBron this year seems to be. He took a little bit of a backseat last season, I think, with Anthony Davis. Bron's kind of. It at least seems like he's enjoying himself a little more this time around. Like he wants this to be a LeBron MVP season, I feel like.
It's insane. He's playing so much and balling out so hard. It's wild. I thought he was going to take back-to-backs off. I thought, like you said, he's going to turn into like this mentor passer. He's still nuclear LeBron, man.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, last season, he led the NBA in assists. And I'm not, I mean, granted, look, his scoring is the same. He's playing less minutes than he did last year.
I thought it was going to be way less.
But there's something a little different, though. I don't know.
Is he hitting different?
Maybe it's just that he's played a little bit better. I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe he hasn't even been better. I don't know.
Is it perception? Like, are all his averages on par with last year?
Pretty much.
Amazing.
I mean, he's shooting better from three.
Talk about shorting a stock. We shorted the LeBron stock.
At 36 years old.
36, that's wild.
I mean, so his per 36 numbers, compared to last year, scoring is up by like 1.5 per 36. Assists are down, rebounds are up a little bit. He's just shooting a lot better from three. But it just feels like there's a little more stunting, maybe?
Yeah, his vibe is different for sure. He seems like he's on a mission. He cares about these awards, right? He always mentions him missing out on these MVPs and Defensive Player of the Year awards. And I'm with him, man. It's not an indicator of what kind of player he is. It's just a vibe. And obviously he should be an MVP every year he plays, and this year is no different.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be a statistical difference because it feels like there is, but not really. It's just kind of swag. When he hit the 3-pointer and turned around,
Oh my God, he's such a dork. He can.
And last night, he just kind of like rained a bunch. Was it last night or the night before when he rained a bunch of threes, some from super deep? I think he hit 7.
Yeah.
Like he just him being 36 years old and this good, with all due respect to Michael Jordan, who's best known for the crying Jordan meme. Like there's not really any comparison at this point.
No, I don't think so either.
LeBron being this good at 36 years old, you're like, barring injury, knock on wood, what's the downslope here?
Yeah.
Like, is he going to play until he's early 40s? Yeah. Still being really good? I don't see him retiring.
I know, right? How long can he play? I'm like, I don't know, 15 more years? I don't know.
I know, for real, like, I think he can play till he's 60.
It's like until his son wins a championship with him. Like, who knows? And,
He's taking Kareem's record, though.
Which is wild because he's not a scorer.
He's going to do it.
I hope he takes everything. And the vacuum of the debate of the GOAT is annoying, but the incentive to claim LeBron as the GOAT is pretty low at this point because it's not even like, oh, you're just picking the young guy or the new guy. I'm like, he's not even that new anymore. He's been playing for decades. Like,
one of the oldest guys in the NBA, basically.
Yeah, and it's just like, you just want your generational guy to win.
Yeah, he's like this young up-and-comer, Joe Biden.
Yeah. No malarkey. Listen.
Finally.
Him.
This hot shot into the Oval Office.
Obi Toppin's like, what's up, shorty? What's up, son?
I feel like LeBron with Anthony Davis is kind of in this groove where they do this for 4 years. They tinker with the roster.
It's too good.
He might add a couple more rings. He's going to top Kareem. We can make these arguments about Jordan versus LeBron until the cows come home, but he's going to put forth a completely ironclad argument by the time he's done.
I agree, and I think we're getting better at litigating these things, and the argument that LeBron has lost finals longevity helps him here because, Michael Jordan missed a bunch of finals. He got beat by Orlando, right? I just think that the degree of difficulty in this league is so intense, and LeBron's achievements kind of have pushed the whole curve of the league towards him, and he's still dominant. I mean, when AD joined LeBron in LA, I remember on this pod we were like, barring injury, which, we're coming off of LeGroin, and AD had a history of ailments, allegedly. I think, barring injury, they were going to win it all every year they were healthy. But if one of them misses a few games in the playoffs, there goes a 7-game series, But they've proved to be oddly resilient in LA.
So I'm excited to watch Simmons and Embiid go against LeBron and Anthony Davis because they are the gold standard right now for teams that have duos. And I've been thinking a lot about what certain players bring to certain teams because what I like about the Lakers is that they basically have 2 superstars and guys who fulfill various tasks. Trez does some rebounding, some post scoring. Marc Gasol, kind of a stretch 5, play some D. Bunch of 3 and D guys. Yeah, Schroeder is kind of a backup ball handler. They have other guys who can score a bunch of points in a given game, but it really is kind of a 2-man show with accessorizing parts.
That's a weak roster without those 2.
For sure. But that also fits into kind of how I like basketball in some ways. In that it's not a dream team. It's like a flawed roster with 2 stars.
Oh, I love that too.
It's not perfect. They've gotten better, and they do have the advantage, of course, of having a market where people want to play and having LeBron James who can recruit guys into the mix. But I feel like as a Sixers fan, they're set up the same way. They basically have 2 stars. They have one who's a ball handler and kind of a creator, and one who's a scorer in the post. Both of them can defend, and it's kind of a mirror image. I mean, of course, Ben Simmons is not LeBron James because LeBron, as we just said, is the GOAT. Mm-hmm. But they are the closest comparison you could find from a generational standpoint. And you kind of look at the rest of the Sixers roster and say, they're built the same way. With all due respect to Tobias Harris's excellent scoring.
Seth Curry, who I love.
He's kind of a Kuz type player. better, but that
sure.
style of guy, give him the
Who's-
ball, he'll get you some buckets, doesn't do tons of other things. And everyone else is kind of a specialist. I mean, Danny Green and Dwight Howard were literally Lakers last year.
I like that you brought up Tobias, though, and I asked you this question maybe a few pods ago. Is the Bosch effect something that's independent of the player? When you have a player with LeBron and maybe AD or Wade and LeBron in Miami, that day one culture, what Bosch did, and he kind of changed his game to accommodate those two superstars. Is that an effect that is independent of Chris Bosch himself, or was that choice?
My theory on this is always that the guy who doesn't get to handle the ball when it comes up the court is the guy who gets the short end of the stick.
True.
Hi, I'm Kevin Love. Bad news, Kev.
Kev, I hate to break it to you, buddy.
Bosch. All right, so when do you feed Bosch? The Bosch man. Well, here's the thing about that. That's always been my working hypothesis. But what's happening in Brooklyn is a little interesting. That you see Harden is really trying to take a step back in terms of being the
For
scorer.
now. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how long he'll do that, but
Yeah, he's too good to do that. I think he should adapt and then go off.
at the same time, this does speak to the idea of redundancies. And we've talked about this a bit with the Nets. Like, they're trying to win with three incredible, dynamic, just explosive offensive talents. At what point do those overlap in ways that become less useful?
I love what's happening to the Nets to that point, and also like a quick broader idea being like I don't believe in the salary cap, and the people who believe in the salary cap would argue that the richest teams would just buy the best teams, best players, and just win every year. Well, the Nets have the best team money can probably buy. They could probably add another player if they want. But that's a flawed team that isn't constructed maybe even as well as the Sixers, the Lakers, for sure. Buying all the players does not guarantee you anything.
Yeah, the Nets are just such an interesting case because you have three guys who, when they're off the ball, don't necessarily give you the value that they possess when they have the ball.
Yep.
And there's one basketball. I know that's the most boomer thing in the world to say, but I don't mean it in terms of sharing it. I mean, all of Kyrie's incredible ball handling isn't being used when he's standing off to the side. If KD is going ISO, James Harden's complete inability to be guarded and magic for drawing fouls isn't being used. He might as well be KCP in those moments. And I know this isn't exactly how basketball works, but it does make me think of guys like Draymond. And of course, my dude Simmons, but guys who don't need to score to do other things. And I'm just really into those kind of players right now because they're so rare.
Oh, for sure. Can I ask you a stock market question? You know how the cliche is diversify, right? As it relates to actions on the court. But nerds in the last 15, 20 years have been like, don't diversify at all. Find the good thing and hammer it home. And it may not look like the thing you're accustomed to, but it'll get you to the end faster, whatever that end may be. And that's where I think the joy is in the Nets. There is less diversity in that roster than there is on the Lakers roster. But if you can get James Harden for that price, which is just getting James Harden, like if you can just acquire a player like him, the price is almost negligible. And even though he presents some redundancies, you just have to do it. And the critics would say, like, where's the defense? It's like, okay, we are not the defensive team. We are the offensive team, and we are willing to let you score 120 on us, but we will score 130.
I'm into what the Nets are doing because it's weird.
So weird.
And it runs in the face of exactly that idea of diversifying your portfolio on a basketball court. I still do think, however, though, that there are certain tasks that need to be accomplished on the court. There needs to be perimeter defense. There needs to be ball handling. There needs to be shooting. There needs to be rebounding. There
I
needs
agree,
to be rim
but is that
protection.
true? Can we do mental gymnastics here, or is that even an option? Does defense matter here? You know what I mean? I know I'm being a troll a little bit.
No, I'm with you. I'm saying that I'm on the same page that this is why the Nets are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I'm excited about the experiment that they're attempting. Mm-hmm. I also think at some point when you just can't protect the rim and you just give up a zillion points to whatever prom king rolls into your gym, I'm like, well, this might be an issue. As glorious as it is theoretically, you're like, well, other teams trying to make it hard for you to score.
Yeah.
You know, on nights when your jumpers aren't all just, when you're just not cooking, you might have trouble stopping the other team from getting, say, layups.
Punting an aspect of the game is something I love, but
Same.
if I was a Nets day one, I would say like, we need to add rim protection. As a NBA nihilist, I'm like, let's just see how this plays out.
Yeah, last year the Rockets kind of just punted on defensive rebounding. Like, we're small. We're just not going to be good at defensive rebounding. We'll be okay, but we'll be amongst the worst in the league, and you're going to be able to hammer us on the offensive boards. We'll deal with it. And it did not hurt their defense that much. Their defense was pretty good. Yeah. Granted, they ran into the Lakers and got smoked in the playoffs, but that said, the defense was pretty good up until then, despite tossing a category like that. And in some ways,
the Warriors did that too.
Yeah, and in some ways, it doesn't matter as well as you do other things at a high level, right? Like, you could punt free throw shooting if you wanted to, if everyone, like, it's possible.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in the vacuum of just one player, if Zion Williamson can convert 75 to 85% of his dunks, it doesn't matter that he's a prom king. He should just be the most epic prom king of all time.
But the Nets thing is funny. What are you punting? Defense. Oh, well, that's a lot.
Yes, that is quite a bit, But I love it because years ago, remember I told you at the long lost bar, Max Fish, like, I don't believe in defense. And this is kind of what I meant, right?
And you also said you don't believe in coaching. So
I don't.
You were really narrowing it down to, like, bucket. The bucket believer is logged on.
Are you a basin that kind of scoots? But
if so, you exist.
So what I meant by that, I was thinking about the Memphis Grizzlies because they had the famous defense at the time and they had zero chance at winning a championship. So that's what I was referencing. But also coaching, I stick by that. There's 3 or 4 coaches that matter and everyone else is Mike Thibodeau. Good, totally good. Good for a bunch of wins, but only as good as the players he has on the court. But anyway, like sometimes I wonder, sacrificing defense is a big sacrifice.
It's a lot.
You don't have to be the best defensive team to win it all, but you should be around like the top 15,
just average,
10.
Mediocre.
Yeah.
Oh no dice.
And
I said we're punting defense.
And I'm really into this because I think Sean Marks is one of the more he's on the brilliant end of GMs, and he knows that Jared Allen is a valuable player for the things he does, but those things are not necessarily replaceable. Irreplaceable. Jared Allen has value as a contract, as a rookie. On that scale, he's extremely, extremely valuable, and that's how it's a way they got James Harden. But I would say in the buyout market, you could maybe replace him. I'm not saying it's going to be Ed Davis, but someone like Ed Davis would help. And you can kind of put Band-Aids on things and heal enough by the time bubble number 2 rolls around. More bubbles.
I don't know what skills are necessarily replaceable in the NBA today, because the emphasis on guard play, transition play, shooting, ability to dribble has really created a league where there are so many guys who can do that. Tons and tons and tons. And I don't know if we have devalued scoring enough. Like, of course scoring matters. It's half the game. It's a big deal. You got to score points. But I was looking at the numbers. There's something like 55 guys in the NBA who score 18 points a game or over, including like RJ Barrett. But like 55 guys. There's nearly 2 per team that can give you 25 on an average night. That's not even rare. That's who gives a shit? There's 2 on every team.
Before stat checkers call us out, I'm looking at it right now. Over 20 points, you're at 35 with DeMar DeRozan at 20.1.
Right, so there's 1 of those on every team.
For sure.
If you go down to
Your
18,
point is good, though. Yeah.
It gets down to like 50 plus. And then if you included guys who don't play that many minutes, who score while they're on the court, and just put it per 36 minutes, it gets to something like 85. So almost 3 guys per team. And, I'm just going to say the Sixers quite quickly here. It's like, we've seen someone like Tyrese Maxey score 39 points. We've seen Shake Milton score 30 points.
Quickly season.
There are so many guys in the league who can just give you 30 on an average night.
But you need one of those guys.
I just feel like they're a dime a dozen.
I'm with you.
It's so easy to get a 20-point score. They're fucking everywhere.
Yeah, and it's about the availability of shots, too. I was watching Serge Ibaka's show. I've been binging that. And Siakam was on right after Kawhi left for L.A. So it was like a season ago. And Serge asked Siakam, like, well, how'd you feel about our boy leaving? And he was like, said the right things. And he was like, more shots for me, man. It's on for it's Siakam season. And Siakam's having, like, a decent time with it. It turns out, like, he's under 20 points for sure. But he's had his bumps. And I'm with you. Like, I think the walking bucket guys like Lou Williams have kind of evolved into this kind of player that is not as rare as Jamal Crawford used to be. And I think of like Jamal Murray for some reason as one of those guys who are just like kind of valuable but can score 50 points on a given night.
Well, just as a quick sort of historical marker, if you go back to 2001, ancient history, 20 years ago. But there were only 34 guys in the league who scored 18 or above. Today it's 55. Like, that's 20 more players.
Wait, what are you looking at? Because I'm getting 44. I'm just curious. Are you looking at a better stat sheet?
I was looking at Basketball Reference leaderboard.
I have Eric Gordon, number 44, at 18 points. Where am I missing this?
This is compelling radio.
I know, but...
I was just looking at 2001. Now I will look at... In real time, folks. This is how the sausage gets made.
Hey, I'm just trying to save you from the mob, the stat mob. M-O-B-B. But your point is taken. Do you think... Doesn't this make the game better? To have these prolific scores, like having a mini Kobe on every bench?
Oh, I had checked it a couple days ago. Yeah, so some of these guys had missed. It was around 50 before. When you're looking at it for the non-qualifiers were not in there. So when you add in those a few guys who missed some games, who pushes it down. That's the difference.
There you go. Yeah.
So the point is, there's a significantly greater number of guys today who are scoring 18 points or more, 20 points or more, 30 points than there were a while back. And I just think we need to adjust our calibration of their scarcity based on the fact that it's changed. There's this inclination to view what happens in basketball as static, but it's not true. The game today and its numbers and its percentages and the efficiency are incredibly different from like the prime of Allen Iverson and Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal and Tracy McGrady. Like, these are the same sport, but a lot of things are different. So when we sit here and say, oh, you got to get a score, a 20-point per game score, like, they're easy to find, man. Just go get one.
Yeah.
They are everywhere.
And also, now that trade season is heating up, a lot of contending teams on the cusp are saying players like Bradley Beal is the answer, right? And he's leading the league in scoring, and he's available. And he was caught yesterday, like with his head in his hand, shaking it. Like, he's a awesomely expressive player. He seems like an awesome dude, but he scores in volumes. He's averaging 34 points. So, and he seems to be gettable. Maybe Washington wants to get assets for him because they're not doing well. I'm with you. I don't think you need to move his market value the other way. And, like, you can find something cheaper. with the same effect, kind of. You don't want him on the
That's kind
Sixers.
of all I'm thinking of this, and it almost goes back to the idea of financial markets and supply and demand.
I hate this because it's like these are humans, but yes, you're 1,000% correct.
I'm not talking about Bradley Beal as much as I'm talking about the skill set of scoring.
Exactly.
I'm not saying there's a lot of Bradley Beals. There aren't. He's really good at what he does.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he's one of the best. But can you get someone whose primary job is to score and knock down some jumpers, and for much, much less? Like, again, he is clearly a vastly better player than like Alec Burks.
Bite your tongue.
I know.
The BPM leader on my Knicks.
But in that way, could you go get Alec Burks for a song and have him contribute some scoring in a way that would effectively remedy whatever you're missing, without, say, giving up 3 draft picks and like your best young prospect?
It's the idea that you might have to move Ben Simmons for Zach LaVine, where you can have Alec Burks for nothing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, I know, it's the Magellan Ben Simmons effect here, but it does. You look around the league and you see the people that everyone gets excited about. And you're like, well, there are so many scorers. How many guys are elite distributors? How many guys are incredible defenders? Like, very few.
Yeah.
There just aren't that many really good defenders in the NBA right now. We've seen it shift towards offense in a way that is incredibly different from, like, say, 2001, where the pendulum was completely on the other side, and you'd start a team with Eric Snow and George Lynch and Tyrone Hill and Dikembe Mutombo and go to the finals.
Yeah. And my grouchiness, to side with your observation, is the kind of NBA marketing manufacturing of players like Devin Booker, Zion, Donovan Mitchell. Like, these are, every time they show up on our TV, they're framed as next. They're going to be the perennial all-stars moving forward, and we should enjoy them because they're up-and-comers. And I'm like, are these guys just scorers? I know they have triple-double potential, but to me they read as Jordan guys, Jordan originalists, right? Like, who can put the ball, I mean, Zion looks completely different, but who can put the ball in the bucket. And you've seen the struggles, we've seen the struggles of all 3 of those players this year, kind of. And the expectations of them being stars has mitigated because what they do is a common resource, like you said.
I don't know if we're getting stupider.
I am.
I am too. But as a people, sure, we definitely are. But the idea of lionizing scores, I think, has always been around.
For sure.
The prom kings of yesteryear, the Mitch Richmonds and the Glenn Rices, those are the guys who made all-star teams. They were always known as the stars on their, even on bad teams. I got Mitch Richmond. He's great. Why? Because he gives you 25 a game.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess he is great then. But I feel like we should be a little bit better at this. But at the same time, the league really is overemphasizing scoring.
I mean, the handsome, pretty person in the room will always get the eyes first, but, like, you may not date them for that long. And to Evolution's credit, we celebrate Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, and it's noisy because of markets, but players that are not just scorers, right? Like, Michael Jordan was not just a scorer. LeBron James certainly is not. But then as soon as we're done doing that, it's almost like we've done penance. Be like, can we just have our scorers? Can I have my cake and eat it too?
I mean, I'm not saying that, like, Rondé Hollis Jefferson should be starting in the NBA. I don't even know if he's on a team.
Yeah, he got
But,
released.
he can really defend. He's a
Yeah,
very, very, very good defender. But, like, he just can't shoot enough to play off the ball. He can't handle the rock enough to be on it. You can sort of spread the floor and have him operate in, a hazy sort of middle area like the Raptors tried to do, and then they cut him as well. I'm like, that's just a bummer, and I get it. I understand why the sport is like this, but it still kind of sucks. I'm not against the modern NBA. I love it. I'm just like, damn, that's a bummer that someone who's as good a defender as Rondé Hollis Jefferson can't stick in the NBA right now. That's rough.
And the kind of the fewer minutes Matisse Thybulle gets makes me think of that. Like, where's Zaire Smith? Like, I thought this was this was my preferable new NBA, and then the Knicks draft Obi Toppin over Tyrese Halliburton, and I'm like, oh, we're still stuck in this zone of like Showtime. And
Yeah, and I'm again. I don't want to make it sound like I'm getting boomery here. There's no dry rub being being dusted over the
this
sport.
is not the Tong song.
I'm more saying I like defensive players. I think they're cool. I wish that they had more options these days, and they don't. And that's for a reason. Look at Frankie Smokes. You would assume that Coach Thibs, who's a defensive-oriented guy, would give him some burn, but he doesn't see the court.
I also think he's hurt, but
You could be right. I'm just saying, like, here's a guy who we know is not a very good offensive player, but he can defend.
he should stick. He's good enough at offense and definitely good enough at defense I want them to re-sign him. I don't want them to move him for Kirk Heinrich.
Are they artificially suppressing his value, much like hedge funders,
So they can keep him?
before Reddit invests heavily in signing
And so they
Frankie Smokes?
trade back for him. I mean,
So here's a question for you, as a big Thibs fan.
that big Thibs
People
energy.
were annoyed about his lineups last night. I looked.
Oh, man.
I looked at the box score for their loss to Utah, who's a much better team than them, and they played RJ a lot. They played Randall a lot. They played Mitch a lot. Obi didn't play too much.
Still recovering.
What's the objection here? What were people annoyed by?
I thought Knicks fans were turning the corner a little bit, but they Al Pacino'd me, man. That Bucatine energy got me again. They're complaining that Elfrid Payton got too much run, and his rotations kind of got the Knicks in trouble after halftime. They were competitive.
I thought he
halftime.
played less than Quickly, though. I mean, Quickly was really bad last night.
So
but,
bad. He's like 1 for 11, I think.
Yeah,
right?
shit happens.
Yeah, he's a rookie. But I
But we didn't want Quickly to play 35 minutes. I mean, he played 25.
Quickly is getting enough run. I'm happy about Quickly. It depends on what you want from this season. I think I've seen enough to be like, okay, now let's try to get a lottery pick. Like, we're on the cusp of being out of the lottery now, and the Knicks will be in it. But wanting to win last night's game, I think, was an odd thing to think about, because, all right, this is complicated, sort of like the Cure's catalog or staring
I
at
like this,
Randall's. Because Mike Thibodeau is kind of cashing in what the Knicks have, and he's using the best of his resource, doing the best with what he has, right? He's won more games than I thought he would. He's burning these guys out for sure. He's cashing in his chips. RJ Barrett, I believe, is second only to Julius Randle in minutes played in the NBA. Just not great, because there's no chance of this team winning anything, and these are young players, right? And I don't think they have an unlimited burn. I think, Donald Trump's whole thing of like, I have limited heartbeats is hilarious, but hey, man, biometrics has shown that if you play players a lot, you run risk of a lot more. So whatever that may be. I don't know what the team wants, and I don't know what the fans want. I think the team is still sticking to this idea of culture, and I think the fans fall in line with that too. But to me, culture is being smart enough to get a chance at a top 5 pick, not necessarily winning versus Utah.
Yeah, my general thing with the Knicks is it's okay to lose. It's okay to want your guys to win at any given night. That's cool.
Yeah.
I feel like as long as young guys are getting some playing time, they're out there getting meaningful minutes. They're, Toppin getting 10 minutes is not enough.
I think he's still a little bit hurt. But also, Thibs is not into rookies, so it may
But he's
just
old. He's like 45 years old.
This is true. He's playing off borrowed time. No malarkey.
Yeah, I think he should play more. But in general, I looked at it and I was like, you know what? The young guys got some minutes. Like, you can't tell a coach like Thibs, who you've hired and paid a lot of money, to only play young guys.
Why not, though?
I just mean, you can't really tell coaches who to play like that.
Really?
It's
Can you
sort of-
not?
Yeah, you kind of can't.
I think you can. I think we've seen it.
I mean, I think you might be able to with some coaches down the stretch. I think you can make. I think there's some professional decorum where you can't just say, "Hey, Thibs."
Well, that's the problem with hiring Thibs, right? Because there's more decorum with. He's less of a successful meat shield. He's lower on the meat shield.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible. I think you could advise him, be like, "Hey, I'd love to see more of Frankie Smokes," and he'd be like, "All right, I'll think about it."
I mean, Steve Kerr, he lost Curry to an injury, but he certainly did that last year. He was playing dudes, man.
Oh, I just mean, I don't think you as like the GM can like tell Thibs, dude, here's how to do your job. I think that's like really stepping on toes kind of in the NBA arena, especially with like a well-regarded coach. Like at least in the case of the Sixers, you've seen Morey be like, yo, I'm totally hands off. Let Doc do his thing. Do I think he brings him ideas and says, hey, how about this lineup? Sure, probably. But I don't think he would say, Doc, you got to start playing this guy. He doesn't have the right to do that.
Which is the plot line of the Brad Pitt movie Moneyball.
Yeah, for real. You're gonna have to trade him, man.
But then we saw an example of this in Golden State last year, right, where a lot of these guys had like flare-ups with their backs and knees, and he ended up playing some really interesting guys and giving them a chance to showcase themselves. But I think he was on the same page as his front office.
That's actually kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are unified in your goal and you're saying, we're going to play young guys, we're going to be really bad, we're getting a lottery pick. Okay, great. If you hire Thibs and say, Thibs, we want you to get in here and win some games. He's like, you know what? I'm going to play everybody 67 minutes a game. I'm going to grind them down into rice, and we're going to eke out 32 wins. It's hard to turn around and say, hey, can you just play like the second round pick and give them like 40 minutes a game and we're just going to lose.
In this case, we might be giving Dolan and Leon Rose a little too much credit. They might be like, win, baby. And Thibs is like, I'm here. Yeah.
They probably are.
It's like, we have the stars. Like, all right. The Knicks have not identified a star yet. And I love Quickly, and Randall's been awesome. And, I love Mitch. But they have not identified the star that Hinkie always talks about in a rebuild. Like, the goal is to get a Simmons or Embiid or an AD or, whoever.
LeBron.
Yeah. They have not identified one of those guys yet.
But I have identified the perfect pod. Wow. It was this one.
Cookies.
And next one. Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.